Hello, everyone. This is the beginning of the new series on a very important sutra called Avatamsaka Sutra. Now, as this is the beginning of the new series, I'd like to explain what we are doing with New York Zen Community for Dogen Study. We are creating a library for those of you who like to study important Buddhist text on your own. So when you come to a library, basically there's first you will see major five departments of the study, which are ancient Buddhism and the Mahayana Buddhism and Koan study. And then there are two departments for Dogen study, as we are specialized in Dogen study. One of them is introductory and intermediate Dogen study and advanced Dogen study. And we also have other auxiliary reading rooms and also other special departments, etc., etc. But what you are looking at is the one of the five major category, and this is Mahayana Buddhism. And in Mahayana Buddhism, we have several series, but this is the beginning of the series on Avatamsaka Sutra. Now, we have tried offering other major Mahayana Buddhist text series, such as Prajnaparamita Sutras, and also Vimalakirti Sutra. And then currently we are adding new recordings of Kannongyo, which is part of Lotus Sutra. Now, after all these trials, we are now adding Avatamsaka Sutra. So we are basically covering basically all the major, most important Mahayana texts in the library. Now, the reason we started to embark on this really ambitious endeavor to talk about Avatamsaka Sutra is that, first of all, Avatamsaka Sutra is quite voluminous and bulky, and it's very long and also kind of difficult to understand what they are talking about. So I was hesitant for quite a long time. But I do have a background of some years, consecutive years. I kept on going back to Nara in Japan, where they have an international Avatamsaka Sutra Research Center in probably the most famous temple in Japan, Todaiji. I'm sure you know this temple very well. Todaiji is the one that hosts that huge Buddha statue. The Todaiji is a Kengon school main temple, and then there they actually have a research center, and then also they still have a very active Kangakuin. Kangakuin is well, it's almost like an equivalent to graduate school of Buddhist universities, and many of those are really traditionally long-standing, very well-known Buddhist temples in Japan still have an active Kangakuin. Probably under our lineage, the most famous story is that Sawaki Roshi, as a secular person, he only received, I believe, 4 years of elementary school education. But after he became a Buddhist monk, he was allowed to come into Kangakuin in Horyuji and stayed there for 9 years and went through very intensive study period of his life. That's why he's so solid in academic knowledge. In Todaiji also has a very well-known, long-standing Kangakuin. Now, many of those programs are open to lay people as well. And then, if you just pay, like currently, I think it increased a little bit, but it's like $10 a year. And then you can pick any of those series to participate and study. So I used to love to go to Nara and stay in a cheaper accommodation and stay for a couple of weeks, and then I kept on going back to Kangakuin in Todaiji. And my favorite topic was, of course, Avatamsaka Sutra commentaries. So I do have accumulated notebooks that I put the notes. I'm a bit like a note freak, as you probably might see me sitting in front of Okumura Roshi. Okumura Roshi is in Genzo. I keep like taking notes. Sometimes those notes, when you come back and take a look at it, it doesn't really make any sense. But anyway, I did have some kind of background of studying Avatamsaka Sutra. And then we have a wonderful Dharma friend who lives in Poland, whose name is Doko-san. Doko-san and I also received a certificate from the same accrediting sodo in Japan called Myokoji. I often talk about this sodo, Myokoji, the temple Myokoji, because this is has a lot of interesting story and connection with the Sawakiroshi. And that is exactly why I ended up going there and living there and studying there too. But anyway, both of us basically graduated from the same monastery. So we keep contact. And then Doko-san is such a wonderful, studious, and knowledgeable Buddhist priest. And then sometimes he sends me some kind of inquiry, and his inquiries are always very interesting, and I actually learn a lot from his inquiries. So one of the inquiries one day came to me earlier this year, 2024, was, Issan, are you familiar with the new translation of Avatamsaka Sutra into English? And I actually wasn't familiar. I studied Avatamsaka Sutra in Sino-Japanese original text, so I didn't pay much attention to English translation, except that I did know there was a formally translated Avatamsaka Sutra into English, and I did read it, and I always had the impression that, wow, this is, well, it's a great effort to put this into English, and then translator must have went through a lot of hard work. But as reading as an English as it is, I didn't make much sense out of it. So that's why I was quite hesitant to talk about Avatamsaka Sutra in English. And then Doko-san's email said, this new translation is based on reflections on what should be developed and what should be, improved based on the former translation. So it seems to be much more, so to speak, readable and understandable. And so it took me a little while to get a hold of this book. The reason was this is so bulky, and it's made into 3 volumes, and each volume is quite costly. So what I did was I first got hold of the volume 3, and this is the book. You can actually see the pictorial image on our website, so please come to visit our website for better information, but this is the book. And then the reason why I got hold of the volume 3 is, as you probably know, 1/3 of this voluminous Buddhist sutra called Avatamsaka Sutra is actually previously one separate former sutra. It is called, in English, Entering the Dharma Realm. And now this is included into Avatamsaka Sutra as it was basically created into a new sutra called Avatamsaka Sutra centuries ago. And then, but then this chapter 39 remains as it used to be as a separate sutra. And this is probably the most important and the most influential portion of the sutra. So I took a look at this, and I was kind of fascinated by this new translation. And yes, as Doko-san says, this new translation really is workable. So I ended up getting hold of the whole volume. It's quite heavy, all of this. And then I started to read from the volume one. Then I felt, I think I can challenge, I can take this challenge. So what happened was after several months of going back and forth and back and forth, I spoke with my Sangha members, and then we decided to do this as our monthly study intensive series. The reason is it takes me a lot of time to really unwrap this in comparison to the original Sino-Japanese text and English text, and try to figure out what I should be presenting to the people, so that people can actually able to use this lecture series as a detailed commentary, so that you can actually study, read the sutra, and study on your own with this basically lecture series as a guidance. So while I'm doing two other lecture series ongoing, the only thing I can do is, it's a little sporadic, but I can do this each month. Now, this month, this is July 2024, as an opening of the new series, I like to do 2 days in a row, Saturday, Sunday. And as you know, August is our reduced scheduled month. So therefore, we come back again in September for all-day study intensive. And I'll do again Saturday and Sunday. And now that we have more people logging in from Europe, we decided to do this in the morning hours, which is afternoon and evening hours in Europe, so that everyone from Europe and also America can log in at the same time. So this is how this series started, and this is going to be a very long process for me and for you and with everyone, because this is so bulky. And then initially I intended maybe I'll just do an introduction and overview only. But as I keep reading on, I'm just so fascinated about the sutra. So I decided to do notation or commentary, so to speak, on every single chapter. So there are 39 chapters, and some chapters are, as I mentioned, it's quite long. So I'm assuming this is going to be like at least 3 years of a project. And particularly, we have only 10 months. We do 10 months a year. We do monthly study intensive, because February and August we are off. So if you are interested, please make a commitment for a long relationship with Avatamsaka Sutra. So what I like to do is, first of all, Avatamsaka Sutra, because of the volume and because of the contents and their language they speak, the way how they speak, it's quite overwhelming and also intimidating. So, I looked into if there's any other detailed commentaries or study group available in English-speaking world. But there's a couple of really nice books, but those books are basically overviews. And also, I have discovered some groups tried to study Avatamsaka Sutra, but in the previous translation, couldn't really make much sense. So they ended up doing what the Japanese we call Sudokukai. Sudokukai is not really a study group, but a recitation group. So you just read it through without any comments or anything. And it looks like most of American Buddhist organization, when they pick up Avatamsaka Sutra, that's the only thing they are doing. So what I really like to do is like I really like to take time and then really make a good connection and then relationship with Avatamsaka Sutra by enjoying the whole process. And of course, my purpose is to, of course, to connect that with Dogen's teaching, and so that portion is also very important. So each time I go into, after I go into each chapter, I like to explain what the chapter is talking about and pick up the most important portion. Because of the volume and length, I don't think I can do like word by word, sentence by sentence commentary like I usually do for the other shorter text. But I'd like to pick up most important portion of each section and like to do detailed explanation and then like to connect it with the Dogen's teaching. So what I'm expecting to do is probably after this introductory portion is done, maybe we can do, if it is a short chapter, one chapter a session. Our session is 90 minutes, so I think that's probably possible, except for some longer chapter. I will spend two lectures on that. So, talking all of that at the beginning, I think what we need to do is a warm up. Like when we are going into a really difficult workout, we really need to do a warm up. So, in other words, I like to create this sense of, oh, I like this. Or, oh, I actually, thought this was completely foreign, but I'm familiar with some portion. So that's the type of the warm up. So it's really like I'm trying to be an intermediate to introduce Avatamsaka Sutra and you to start to open your new friendship. So and what I like to do as this whole introductory portion is after that I go into rather kind of a dry explanation. It's a compulsory. So sometimes this kind of academic explanation of a sutra is tedious and boring, but it is very important actually. So I like to start the next portion. I like to talk about the name of Avatamsaka Sutra. We are currently speaking this sutra by the name of Avatamsaka Sutra, or very often in English as a Flower Adornment Sutra. And in Sino-Japanese, it is known as Kegon Kyo. Kyo is a sutra, Kegon is the name. So I often refer this sutra as a Sino-Japanese way, Kegon Kyo. So please remember that when I mention Kegon Kyo, I'm talking about Avatamsaka Sutra, but all of those names we often use is actually not accurate. So it's quite interesting to know why this sutra became to be known as Kegon Kyo or Flower Adornment Sutra, but this requires quite a long time to explain and also find out why it is so interesting. So I'll do that for the second portion. And then third portion would be just in case you are the type of the person who are not able to keep on listening to this long-standing years and years long lecture series, and you feel a little impatient, I like to give you an overview. In another word, I like to give you what's the most important portion or characteristic portion of how Avatamsaka Sutra teaches Buddha Dharma and Buddha way. And then also like to do an overview and a very brief, it's like those book series of such and such for dummies, like Mac for dummies, Buddhism for dummies kind of thing. It's awful. But I think for some people who don't really have much time, it is, easy and useful. So I like to do that as a part of the introduction, as a threefold introduction. third portion. And then after I complete that, I like to go into chapter by chapter by chapter. I'm assuming the first 3 or 4 lectures will be spent on this introduction before we go really into the chapter by chapter study. But in this way, if you cannot really spend that much of time, by listening to this first 3 or 4 introductory portion, you get basically a rough idea, overview, like a ballpark idea of what the Avatamsaka Sutra is about and what our lecture series is about. So this is a long process. It's a long-standing relationship. So よろしくお願いいたします。長いお付き合いになると思いますので、よろしくお願いいたします。Now, first portion is a warm-up. Recently, I hear the news from all over the world, but many people are really interested in traveling abroad. And so much so, some nations are starting to scream about, anti-tourism, so to speak, because of the over-tourism. I have seen something like, typical over-tourism situation in, well, first of all, Italy. And I know there are lots of things going on in Spain. And in my homeland, particularly Kyoto, we are really experiencing this stretch of over-tourism. But in all, I think it's really a wonderful thing that Buddhist practitioners travel to those, homelands like India or Silk Road nations or China or Korea or Japan or Vietnam or Ceylon, Sri Lanka, shall I say, to feel this, long connection. And you kind of viscerally feel that millions of people, thousands of years, people made such incredible effort to maintain this Dharma. And then now, because of all these people's effort, sometimes it's blood and sweat and tears, we do receive this Dharma. So it really makes us feel, wow, this is something very important and precious. And so therefore, I cannot diminish it. I cannot really destroy this something millions of people, thousands of years, and all over the world tried to maintain so that I can receive it. I shouldn't destroy it. So, that kind of a realization is very important. And particularly, it really hits you so well when you travel to those places. So I'm still for it. And as a matter of fact, with this, our group, New York Zen Community for Dogen Study, as you know, I usually spend half of the year in Japan and continue to study and practice in Japan. And during those months, I often invite the people to come to join me in Japan and study and practice and travel together. So I'd like to start from there. This Avatamsaka Sutra or Kengon-kyo made incredible, huge impact to all these traditionally Buddhist Asian nations. And then, so therefore, as a travelers to the world, you might have probably heard many of those gigantic structures built in all of those nations, such as, let's start from the China. In China, you must have heard about this, it's like a stone cave called Longmen-shiku. Longmen-shiku, I know I have a very bad pronunciation in Chinese, but it is called Ryumon-sekku. And this Ryumon-sekku has this immense numbers of incredibly large Buddha statue and other deities statues. I like to show this through internet on shared screen, some pictures. So you probably do know about this. I'm sorry. Hold on. Doing something wrong. Hold on. Let's see. I think this shows. And then some of you probably may say, oh, I've been there. So this particularly the famous one is this Buddha statue. This Buddha statue carved on this immense stone wall was made in 672. So I'm going to talk about this years and how Kengon-kyo was established, etc., later, much more in detail. But just briefly, as a warm-up, the first translation, which appeared in China, was a 60 version of Kengon-kyo. All of this technical thing, you will receive the explanation later. But just right now, it's a warm-up, okay? It was 420. But soon after, China created the Temple of Kegon, and then Temple of Kegon also became the center of Kegon school, because Kengon-kyo is such immense structure of sutra, and you can actually create the entire structure of Buddhist theology out of this one sutra. So therefore, they created the school that exclusively studies Buddha way and Buddha Dharma out of Kengon-kyo, and then created the Kegon school. And then unfortunately, this Kegon school's temple has been destroyed, and there's a remaining. But then we do know this Kegon temple was an immense, huge structure from the ruin of it. But 100 to 200 years later, in Tang Dynasty, they also created this immense statue to depict the world. It's depicted in Kengon-kyo. So if you are world travelers, and particularly if you are interested in Buddhist sites, you might have traveled to China. This is one of my own personal bucket list. Someday I would love to go there and take a look at this Buddhist statue. And another one you might have known is, of course, when Kengon-kyo was brought over to Korea, Korea really took it to their heart. And even now, most of the denominations, or almost like an entire Buddhist community in South Korea, basically sees Kengon-kyo as the principal text, including those people who are inclined towards Zen teaching, still sees Kengon-kyo as a principal teaching, which is very interesting to me, because Dogen also utilizes quite a few, imageries and quotation from Kengon-kyo as well. So in Korea, you might have seen Korea also created a Kengon temple, and that was also the center of Kengon school. Currently, this Kengon temple in Korea also is combined with basically Soto line of Zen teaching as well. And as you can see, this is also a quite large structure. So what I'm trying to start to get it is like as large as this world Kengon-kyo depicts, when we try to kind of envision it in our own society, Buddhist community, it tends to be depicted in a huge structure, huge Buddha. Skipping Japan first, Buddhism also went to Indonesia as well. It's kind of interesting that currently we don't really see Indonesia as a Buddhist nation, but also, at that time we're talking about, let's see, 700 and 880 AD, so 8th century, 9th century, there was a huge influence of Kengon-kyo also went to, Indonesia. So if you are somebody who spent some time in Indonesia and also traveled to Indonesia, I know one of our Sangha members also goes, and another person we had a connection actually had a son who studies in Indonesia. So we do have several people among us, close to us, also travel to Indonesia, and all of them actually goes to this place called Borobudur. Borobudur is also designated as a UNESCO cultural heritage. So it's a huge Buddhist kind of a stone temple. And then along these, how do you call that? Those walkway around this stone temple. On the wall, it's hard to see this in this picture. There's a depiction of carved pictorial images. And interestingly, majority of these carved pictorial images are from, as I mentioned, 39, chapter 39 from this book. In another word, the last portion of Avatamsaka Sutra is entering into the Dharma realm. This entering into the Dharma realm depicts this wonderful seeker whose name is Suddhana. And Suddhana is instructed to visit 53 teachers, in another word, 53 bodhisattvas. And from each visit, he learns more and more about the Buddha Dharma. So that story is actually depicted along this immense structure. So, just by, out of curiosity and you just want to go somewhere far and somewhere exotic and you go, spend some vacation time for, foreign nations, etc., etc. And then you encounter the remnants of a huge impact and influence left in all of our Asian countries. So, our audience in real time for this lecture series includes quite a few numbers of a high percentage of the people who are ordained under Soto Zen School of Japan. And obviously, because of that, they have to spend some time in Japan for training, for in the accrediting Soto, and also after graduating it and after becoming a teacher, many of those people keep coming back to Japan as basically like a pilgrimage tour, or supporting their own students going through Soto, etc., etc. So for me, it's a wonderful tradition. And then during my time spending in Japan each year, I often receive, the people from America, people from Italy, people from France, Belgium, etc., etc., coming to Japan, and we travel together. And when we travel together in Japan, 100% of the time, one site is included. Well, besides, AAG, of course, for us, is Todaiji. As I mentioned, Todaiji is the temple in Nara. Let me just show you, in case you don't have your own picture, I have something I can show you from the internet. Let's see, Todaiji. Todaiji hosts this immense Buddha statue. It's one of the largest, world's largest Buddha statue known to us. And I think oldest one preserved, because this is from 752 AD. And then it's probably the oldest metal-made Buddha statue. When it was made in, eyes were opened, so to speak, by Kaiganshiki, eye-opening ceremony in 752. It was coated with, gold. Unfortunately, this area, currently this Buddha statue is covered under this immense wooden structure. In this picture, you don't probably feel the size of it, but there's this incense burner here, right? If I stand next to this incense burner, my height is probably reaching only half of this incense burner. So you can tell how immense this wooden structure is. This is the third structure because it was burned and destroyed twice since 752. The current structure was made in, I believe it's in Edo period. So, but it's still 700 years old, and currently it's the largest, oldest wooden structure in the world. So you can tell how immense this Buddha statue is if you are somebody who hasn't visited there. So interesting portion is, let's say this Kengon-kyo, the first Sino-Japanese translation, well, Chinese translation appears in 420. In just a matter of a few hundred years, it just spreads through almost like, what's the English word? Fire in the middle, like all over the places. And then creating these Buddhist temples and also, statues, of course, means something is really influential in here and in here. Our spirituality and mentality, culture, etc., etc. And so from looking at this, you can really tell how important this Kengon-kyo was and is. And by the way, this the Buddha statue in Todaiji, most of the people in this group have been there, so you probably know this very well. But it's a depiction of Vairochana Buddha. Vairochana Buddha is the kind of I always mispronounce this word, personification of the Dharmakaya. So it's almost like a metaphor of what the Dharmakaya means. And also, in the Kengon-kyo, it also utilized as a metaphor as Shakyamuni Buddha's enlightened figure. So when Shakyamuni Buddha is an enlightened figure, which also means that is the true reality, or as it isness. So I think this is a very interesting portion, when you come to visit Nara and come to visit Todaiji as a tourist, and then you start to feel like, whoa, when you go inside. And that's this awesomeness, this, how do you say, immeasurably largeness. And of course, we live in 21st century, and many of us live in large cities, and we are quite familiar with those large buildings, and etc., etc. But it's different because 1,500 years ago, people did this. So I think this is very interesting, and then give you almost like a visceral sense of what the Buddhist text is talking about by utilizing the word Vairochana or Dharmakaya, true reality or true view of the world, etc., etc. So here I like to stepping a little aside, and I like to talk about this word Vairochana, and then again I want you to feel quite close to this whole concept, and also Kengon-kyo, because you already know this from meal chant, and all of you, or many of you, are quite familiar with our oryoki style. And then when we do formal oryoki, a formal meal, we recite these names of the Buddhas. And particularly in our Dogen school, we actually, it's supposed to be 10 qualities of Buddha. In this case, Buddha is B as a capital B, so it's Buddha, 10 quality of the Buddha Dharma. And then, of course, Dogen, who is a huge, someone also received a huge influence from Lotus Sutra, adds the title of Lotus Sutra into quality of the Buddha, true reality. So in our recitation, it's 11 quality, but it is usually normally called, utilizing the traditional, original way, recitation of 10 Buddhas or 10 qualities of the Buddha. And then what happens is we start from Vairochana Buddha, pure Dharmakaya, Lochana Buddha, complete Sambhogakaya, Shakyamuni Buddha, myriad Nirmanakaya, and then goes into Maitreya Buddha of future birth, all Buddhas throughout space and time. This is our ancestors in the real world who appeared and disappeared. And then Lotus of the Wondrous Dharma, Mahayana Sutra. Why Lotus of Wondrous Dharma? The title of Lotus Sutra is regarded as a depiction of the quality of what it is. Please come to our series of Kannongyo, and there will be a full explanation about that. And then Manjushri Bodhisattva, great wisdom, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, great activity, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, great compassion, all honored one Bodhisattva Mahasattva, wisdom beyond wisdom, Mahaprajna Paramita. You're very familiar with this. So this Dharmakaya and then portion is depicted as a personification by Lochana Buddha. That is the Buddha you see in Todaishin. I always wonder what this means. Ever since I entered into the practice, ever since the first time I ever heard about this Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, I always wondered what it means. I have received many lectures and many explanations about technically, academically, theologically, what Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya means. But I'm talking about what it means to me in my life. So, I often talk about this, so some of you probably have heard me talking about this many times, but I'm just going to take this down from a shared screen so I can see the audience. Many years, for about 20-some years, I basically made my living out of professional hospice caregiver. In the United States, I was hired by nation's second largest healthcare system, which also had a hospice department. And I was, for a long time, hospice chaplain. And in Japan, I converted the property I used to own into a public clinic, and then made 2 floors into residence for the people who don't really have a safe place to live, and then can be covered by national insurance and receive the care. In another word, it was a geriatric end-of-life care space. So I was going back and forth between Japan and New York, and then involved with many elements of how to carry out end-of-life care facilities and care itself. And then, so many of those teaching was actually I keep in my mind as almost like a little koan, so to speak. It's a question to myself. How does this teaching manifest? And I kind of go through everyday life and then wait until everyday life itself manifests itself to me. So one day I was, this is the years of the time I had an office in hospice residence building. And this hospice residence had, I think it was 12 rooms to host the people who were not really safe to stay home, or who don't really want to go to nursing home or assisted living facility for many reasons. And then there was one young man, I think he was still in his late 20s, 27, 28 maybe, and he had inherited this generative muscle disease condition, and it was already coming to the point that he couldn't really move. So he was bedridden, bedbound, and he wasn't even able to shift to chair anymore. So he came to our residence, and then we can totally understand how frustrating it is for him not to be able to move, and he's only 27, 28. It's the height of the youth. And then many of your friends from the elementary school and junior high school, etc., etc., are really actively involved with the communities and actively involved in the society and doing many things. And now I have to be in hospice. This is such a frustrating situation. I think I can really relate to that. But he was known to be immediately as a screamer. He had this immense scream that just echoes through, And then it's not only about the pain, but I think it was really about more mental, spiritual frustration. So at that time, the head of the medical team, this doctor, was a very Buddhist meditation friendly person. So I was asked to come in to his room, and the doctor asked me if there's any way to incorporate Buddhist meditation system to alleviate his frustration or his pain, etc., etc. Initially, the whole family refused any kind of spiritual service because they are not spiritual people. In other words, they had a little bit of advanced feelings toward the so-called established religions. But they discovered that I am not coming from a Judeo-Christian tradition, but I'm Buddhist. And then their image of Buddhism is not really like a Judeo-Christian type of image. So they said, okay. So one day, for the first visit, I come in, and then parents decided to leave the room and leave two of us alone, in case this young man wants to talk. And he really didn't want to talk, and he had nothing to talk about. I think he was also a little curious about me coming in, Asian guy, and then shaved head, and etc., etc. And then the word Buddhism itself must have been quite foreign to him. But anyway, I normally don't really approach people like saying I'm a Buddhist, please, etc., etc. I just come in and observe and see if there's anything we can work together. So what I did was I asked for the permission to sit next to him on a chair, and then I noticed his pain comes and goes and comes and goes, which is also quite interesting to me because I have a long-standing history of having some kind of illness and being hospitalized ever since I was a child. The oldest memory I have was I was probably like 5 years old or 6 years old. It was obviously before elementary school. I caught scarlet fever, which is quite unusual, even at that time in Japan as well. But now I don't think it's kind of diminished, and I don't think anybody gets scarlet fever. And then I remember I was isolated in the bedroom, and then one day I felt good enough to stand up and look at myself in the mirror in the bedroom. And I pushed my tongue out in the mirror, and I saw my tongue was like strawberry, which is one of the typical, symptom, and it really frightened me. So, just besides that, for the last 70 years or so, I did have several experiences. So I'm also able to see the situation from the point of view from the bed, not being able to move. So I'm very, very cautious approaching these people, and I always go a little lower so that I don't really meet the people from uphandedly from the above. So, and also in those days when I'm sick, and also I went through a very short period of receiving antidepressant medication as well. So I do understand depression as well. And then and of course, in those days I was already practicing Buddhist meditation. So I did really understood even something like a very acute pain, or even something like a very deep depression does not stay as it is. Even depression has upside, downside. Sometimes it's dissipated, sometimes it comes back, sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it's light, as well as pain. So I noticed that, and then I asked him, what part of the body does it hurt? And he said, everywhere. But then I said, is there any portion of your body that doesn't feel pain, at least some period of time? And he is quite serious because, these people know they are sick and they're in pain. So therefore, they are quite serious about how to alleviate it. And this is also a very important portion of the Buddhism, because in Buddhist sense, we are all sick. And most of us are not really recognizing how sick we are. And the most important portion is to enter Buddhism, Buddhist teaching, is to recognize how sick we are. So working with these people who are at the end of life, I really learned so much about this alertness and urgency to learn, to alleviate the pain. So he's really seriously kind of scanning through his body, and then he told me, oh, my right hand side, particularly on the palm, doesn't hurt. And I thought this was really interesting to me. Again, as a metaphor, there's always some portion that is not affected by illness, And then, so I said, can I touch your hand? And he said, yeah. And then I touched his palm, and then I tickled him. And then he started to giggle. So I said, is it ticklish? And he said, yeah. So at that right little moment, there was a little moment of comfort and solace. And his attention is now on top of this place where it's not affected by illness. It never hurts, never gets sick, probably never die, And then of course pain comes back. And then he starts to lose the attention to his palm on the right hand, and he's just going to make a grimace, and he starts to yell and scream. And I wait, and until the scream comes down, and I say, can I touch your hand again? And he says, yeah. And then I tickle, and he giggles, and then pain comes back, and he yells, and I wait. And then I ask again, can I touch your hand? He says, yeah. I tickle, he giggle, and then comes back. We repeated this several times on the process of that. And then I started to feel maybe he's getting a little tired. And then the next time he said it giggles and he's smiling. So I said, I think I'm going to leave now to you. Maybe you will be able to fall asleep now. Then I come back some other time. So that was my visit until throughout the time he became unconscious and actively died. That's the only thing I did. But in my mind, I have this kind of concept or idea or knowledge, shall we say. It would be, you may say it's a medical knowledge or knowledge from experience, but it's abstract. And then I really have to utilize it in a more visceral, visible way. And then that tool was my hand and his hand. And then when I tickle him, he giggles. his comfort appears, his comfort is manifested. So therefore, this abstract concept that you cannot really see anything through this medium called two hands creates, manifests something really manifested. So in another word, Vairochana Buddha symbolizes Dhammakaya. Dhammakaya is like an emptiness you really cannot grasp, but by constant and also sincere effort, which is symbolized by Lochana Buddha, complete Sambhogakaya, constant, complete, sincere effort. It's another way, right? It's like finding the tool for skillful means constantly, which constantly changes. And then some kind of a manifestation of the teaching or knowledge or wisdom, shall we say, may manifest in the form of Shakyamuni Buddha, which is a historically manifested body in this strange world we live in called Nirmanakaya. So I think this Hoshin, Hoshin, Oshin, Dhammakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya is not like three separate things, but it's one thing. It's constantly kind of, going on, so to speak. If we really sincerely, honestly, and also creatively continue to practice, which is symbolized by Sambhogakaya. And there's always a link between this rather conceptual Dhammakaya into manifestation, Nirmanakaya. So it's almost like in Kannongyo, in the verse portion, Kannongyo is the chapter 25 of Lotus Sutra, there's 12 challenges depicted in a very realistic way. And this line is talking about problem and then actually disappearance of the problem. And those two scenes are connected with a very interesting word, Nempi Kannonriki. Nempi Kannonriki. Nempi Kannonriki, according to what I learned from Sawaki Roshi, it is about Shikantaza practice. So if you insert the practice of Shikantaza, this two world actually is the same world. So I think I felt, wow, this is really like linked with the Kannongyo as well. And that's why in Kannongyo, this link is depicted as symbol of compassion. And here in three kaya system, it is symbolized as non-ending, unyielding practice. So I thought this was a very interesting portion. Anyway, I was trying to do a warm-up to make you a little feel more familiar with, Kengonkyo. So I like to go back there. But I think it's really interesting that, in our daily practice, all of those things that's depicted in Kengonkyo or something we thought something very foreign and afar, like Todaiji and this big Buddha, Daibutsu in Todaiji, are actually something really familiar with us already through our practice. Anyway, let me go back to this worldwide traveling thing, and particularly fun traveling we did together in Japan. So, recently, completely going back to the former subject, in the United States, there was a wonderful television series was released. It was called Shogun. It's remake of 1970s television series on, titled Shogun, but this time it was much more historically accurately depicted with the computer simulations and all of that, and also actors were actually Japanese-speaking actors, and then so it was very interesting to us. And this television series received so many awards and swept many of those television awards. And so some of you might have seen this. And this shogun is actually based on Tokugawa Ieyasu, who brought nearly 300 years of peaceful time to Japan. Previously, Japan went into more than 100 years of what we call Sengoku period, which is loosely translated warring time. Central government lost the control throughout the Japan, and then there are more than 200 local clans started to say, we own this portion of the land, and each one of them started to battle each other to gain the control throughout the nation. So it was a really awful time. Not only for the people, but also for Buddhism and evolution of Japanese Buddhism itself too. But because of Tokugawa Ieyasu brought the peace back into the nation, it was also restoration of the Buddhist temples, which many of them were destroyed during this warring time. So, for us, it's a bit like very interesting, important figure, and it's kind of interesting to go visit his site, right? So he is memorized in this beautiful shrine structure, which is now designated again UNESCO World Heritage, and it is called Toshogu. And I believe many of the people who goes to particularly Tokyo area, as it's an easy access from Tokyo, goes and visit there. And if you go visit there, you might have taken some kind of bus tour and went to see some very scenic sites surrounding this shrine called Toshogu. And one of them is a fall, it's a cascade called Kegon no Taki. It's the fall of Kegon. So again, I'm going to do the shared screen and then show you the pictures from internet. This is the Kegon no Taki, fall or cascade of Kegon. For some reason or another, by the time Edo period starts, the word Kegon, Avatamsaka, was so popular, and then this whole imagery they had about Kegon spread through not only the name of the temple or imagery of the Buddha statue, but also they started to name even the fall under the title of this sutra. So if you are somebody who traveled to Toshogun, traveled to Tokyo, and you might have visited there, so you see it's already in you. Isn't that interesting? Something you felt so far away from you, but you already have known this. Now, another one I kind of like to talk about is, when I became a hospice chaplain, I believe I was the nation's first non-American Buddhist-based full-time hospice chaplain who worked for large hospice organization legally. So I got lots of attention from the people who particularly was interested in Buddhism. And interestingly, first sets of requests came all from psychotherapists, psychiatrists, and psychologists. The reason was around that time, I'm talking about around the millennium, there was a book written by a Japanese member of Jung Association, who is a very well-known psychoanalyst, wrote a book about this Buddhist teacher called Myoe. Myoe is a one generation before Dogen, but he was a friend of Yosai, who brought Rinzai Zen to Japan for the first time, and looks like Dogen actually have heard about Yosai, or most possibly could have met Yosai in person. But eventually, because of Yosai, after Dogen left Enryakuji Tendai School, he went to Kenninji, Japan's first so-called Zen temple opened by Yosai, and studied with Myozen, who took over the position of Yosai afterward. But anyway, Myoe was a good friend of Yosai, and he was a teacher from Kegon School in Japan. As I mentioned, Todaiji became the head of Kegon School, and when Todaiji was built already in 8th century, Japan already started to have a Kegon School, and then it also produced many strong Buddhist teachers. Myoe was one of them. In Myoe's very active years, Myoe was regarded as one of the top Buddhist teachers, and then also hired by the court and the government and asked to teach in these interdenominational Buddhist so-called universities in Kyoto. So he was given his own temple site outside of Kyoto, but it's beyond mountain range. It's a beautiful mountain. He received. It's called Kozanji. And then in this Kozanji, he himself lived and commuted to major universities in Kyoto. We are talking about 1100s. And then Myoe is notably world's first dream analyst. He was very active in dream, and he was also starting to see some kind of connection between dream world and this world, and then depths of the consciousness study. It's very kind of Yogacara type of understanding. And then his dream diary was translated and analyzed by this Buddhist friendly psychoanalyst in Japan, and translated into English and spread among those American and English-speaking world, and then created some sort of a interest boom into Buddhism. And I realized that through the requests I received. I actually didn't know about this book, didn't know much about the Myoe until then. So next time I went back to Japan after that, I of course went to visit Kozanji. Kozanji is now designated again as a UNESCO heritage site, and it's preserved very nicely. And once you go into Kozanji, the first figure which welcomes you is this figure. This is a very famous figure. This is the way how they, they place it in the main entrance. So you step in, and on this side is the Myoe's former living quarter, and that's where he also sat meditation and also studied and lived. And outside of this terrace, they put this statue. This statue is Sudana statue. So yes, of course, Myoe is from Kegon school, but it also shows by that time this chapter 39, the ending portion of the Kegon-kyo, really fascinated people. And then many of those way seekers or Buddhist practitioners, shall we say, were really related to this figure who keeps on studying and keeps on visiting 53 bodhisattvas, and etc., etc. And this is probably Japan's most famous Sudana statue. But when you start to visit around those art galleries or national museum, etc., etc., you will see this Sudana figure fascinated, as well as Indonesia, Japan too, and they created lots of figures out of this Sudana. I think this is also very interesting because this Sudana's visiting 53 basically means endless practice as well. that seems to be one of the major theme of Kengonkyo. I'm going to talk about it much later in detail, but just by visiting around those sightseeing portion, you really learn so much about the characteristics of a Kengonkyo. I think that's very interesting. Now, talking about the 53 Bodhisattva visited by Sudarna. If you are somebody who's a fan of art, particularly like Japanese wood print art, which influenced a lot into like French Impressionists, and then started to change the course of Western painting, as well as giving the impact into Japan. And then this Western East art fiction started to merge. So many of you may be interested in Japanese wood prints, particularly Hokusai and maybe you might Hiroshige, and you might probably know this depiction of Tokaido 53 post town picture. Let me just show this to you. Again, on the shared screen, so it's easier for me to explain. Let's see. So I think it's this one. I have heard this depiction is currently, together with the Mona Lisa, world's most recognizable pictorial image. So as a matter of fact, this depiction is a depiction of 53 post towns between Edo, current Tokyo, and Kyoto. What happened was they created a highway to connect Tokyo and meaning Edo and Kyoto. And then, in those days you have to walk. So currently it's like less than 2.5 hours by Shinkansen. I think it's less than 2 hours by Shinkansen. But in those days, it took many, many days. And if regular people walk around, it usually required 53 stops. And in those 53 stops, they created a town that has accommodations and restaurants and rest place and etc. etc. Those are called shikubamachi in English, post town. And currently, when you travel to Japan as a tourist, you may include one of those preserved post towns, which is kind of fascinating. I have seen some YouTube channel about European tourists visiting those preserved post towns, calling this post town as a samurai town. But yes, it does preserve those old looks. And then, of course, both Hiroshige and particularly Hiroshige created a series of 53, and including Tokyo and Kyoto. So starting point and last designation, 53 painting sets. So you probably know about this pictorial image. But I like you to pay attention to this 53. Historically and scientifically speaking, we cannot really prove this. But this is traditionally said among us, and also Aoyama Roshi, our teacher, one of our main teachers, often talk about this story. Oh, by the way, this is the 53 post towns. And I believe this famous Hokusai wood print about the wave is a depiction from where I have my apartment. It's off from Shinagawa side. But of course, currently we reclaimed several blocks into the bay and ocean, so we don't really see it that way. But I have an apartment right across the former Tokaido, this 53, the first post town after Edo. But anyway, it is now included into city of Tokyo. It's a part of Tokyo now, so I always call I have an apartment in Tokyo, but it used to be outside of Tokyo. But anyway, this 53. Aoyama Roshi always tells us this story about this is also based on the influence of Kengon-kyo, particularly this entering into Dharma realm, the last chapter. So therefore, they imagined Edo being a secular place, samsara place. And then you visit 53 bodhisattvas, and then you reach Dharma realm, which is depicted as a Kyoto. And when you enter Kyoto, Kyoto, as you know, is designed in a grid style. And then this style actually looks like our Okesa style. So therefore, it's their intentional image, leaving Tokyo and visiting 53 places into Okesa town, or realm made into style of Okesa, is actually visual depiction made into actual major construction of the freeway by Kengon-kyo. So by now, you really recognize what an incredible impact it has been making to not only Japanese culture, geography, buildings, and infrastructure, etc., but also Korea, China, and Indonesia, etc., etc. And then you also recognize you are actually quite familiar with this by now. Yes. Now, I have about 15 more minutes, and I'd like to tell you a little more about, as a Buddhist priest or a Buddhist practitioner from Soto school, you are also quite familiar already some portion of this Kengon-kyo. For instance, let me show you this. Hold on. I'm going to use the shared screen again, so it's easier for me to show this. You do know this recitation very well. It's Sankyemon, 3 refuges. We recite this, let's say, in our Jukai ceremony, ordination ceremony, or let's say, if you are somebody, if you have a tradition of conducting Adornment ceremony, Fusatsu ceremony each month, or maybe twice a month, depending on Zen centers you are related with, we recite this too. This is the original. Jiki ebutsu, togan shujo, taige daido, hotsu mujoi. Jiki eho, togan shujo, jinju kyozo, chie nyokai. Jiki eso, togan shujo, tori daishu issai muge. Many of us are familiar with the English translation, and this is the translation I think San Francisco Zen Center utilizes. And also, I think Okumura Roshi utilized this translation. So Doshi says, Okumura Roshi would say, I take refuge in Buddha, and all of us participating, Fusatsu would say, bowing with all beings, immersing body and mind deeply in the way, awakening to mind. And it goes as, I take refuge in Dharma, I take refuge in Sangha. Did anybody tell you it actually comes from Kengon-kyo, Avatamsaka Sutra? In Kengon-kyo, there's a chapter called Pure Conduct. And then if you did already have this book, and I hope for those of you who are following this lecture series, either in real time in person, or following by lecture by videotape later on, I highly recommend you get your copy of this book. I have to clarify, I don't work for the publishing company, I don't know these people, but I'm utilizing this as a textbook for this lecture series. So it does make sense if participants do have the textbook. Without the textbook, it's very difficult to follow the lecture series. This is not a Dharma talk to entertain Danka members or community members. This is a very stoic lecture series, which in Japan we offer in monasteries to basically ordained priests, and some temples and monasteries opens it up to anybody who's interested in the topic subject. But normally it's kind of like a university classroom type of lecture series, which is quite common in Japan. But I do understand it's not commonly done in the United States or European nations, except for Okumura Roshi's lecture series. So it is very important. Like if you go to university, you have to buy a textbook anyway. So please do get hold of this textbook. If you do have this textbook, it is in volume 1, page 317. You see the original of this Issan Koyama Three Refuge recitation actually come from Kengon-kyo. It's interesting, isn't it? Like we are actually utilizing monthly base, annual base, daily base maybe. And another one, you're probably very familiar with this. This is Adornment recitation. Again, we do this in Fusatsu and also Jukaie, precepts ceremony. As a matter of fact, before we take precepts, we have to kind of determine to clarify and clean and atone our previous, basically, bad karma we created through our action and mind and speech. And then there's this Gashoku Shogo Shoakugo Kaiyu Mushi Tonjinchi Jushin Kui Shishosho Issai ga Konkai Samte. When we say this in English, recitation in America, it's a little long because English translation tend to become a little longer than the original Sino-Japanese word. But if we say verse of repentance, saying, all my unwholesome karmic deeds. Let me recite in the way we do. All my unwholesome karmic deeds, caused by beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, speech, and thought, now I make complete repentance. We normally do this 3 times, don't we? And that, did you know, actually does come from Kengon-kyo. Isn't that interesting? Again, this is almost rooted into my memory and psyche, and we just didn't know this was actually from Kengon-kyo. I'm going to explain this later in following lectures, but currently we have different forms of Kengon-kyo. This is translated from Taisho Daizokyo. Taisho Daizokyo is an entire collection of Buddhist sutra translated into Chinese, re-edited in Japan in Taisho era. So this Taisho Daizokyo actually had quite great numbers of supporters, and we placed it into website, and it's for free access. You don't need to pay anything or membership or anything. Anybody can make an access, and you can see, as long as you can read the original Sino-Japanese text, you can just go there as a library and see it online. And then, besides those, actually, Taisho Daizokyo has 2 different versions of Kengon-kyo. One of them, we call it the 60 Kengon-kyo, and another one is 80 Kengon-kyo. This is the longer version, 80 Kengon-kyo's English translation. Normally, we in Japan, as a Buddhist priest or Buddhist students, study 60 version, shorter version. But I'm going to talk about some other time, a little more in detail. But besides that, we also have a Tibetan translation. And then Tibetan translation version was also retranslated in Sino-Japanese and Japanese. And I believe some of them probably were translated, according to what I heard, in French as well. So in Europe, you may have, if you are European students, you may have your own language translation of this Tibetan version as well, which is we call as 40 version. This is because of the numbers of the scrolls originally. In this Zangemon, verse of repentance, is from this Tibetan version, in another word, 40 Kemon version. But still, it's quite interesting that we are using this all the time, but we didn't know it was from Kemon Kyo. So, as a Buddhist practitioner in Soto school, we already have experiences to be deeply in touch with not only just literature, but also we have a deep spiritual and also mental, emotional, psychological connection through this portion, we recite all the time. So I find it very interesting. So I hope by this first portion of warm-up, I'm trying to warming you up toward this, unless otherwise rather intimidating sutra called the Kengon-kyo, or the Avatamsaka Sutra, or the Flower Adornment Sutra, making this a little more kind of how to say, friendly and intimate with you. I hope it worked that way. So now it probably successfully created a little more interest into this sutra. So in the next lecture, I'd like to go into the second portion of my introduction, which is about a little more technical or academic, shall we say, explanation of how this Kengon-kyo was composed and came to the shape we know now, and also differentiation of the 60 version, 80 version, how this is constructed, this mystery of the name Kengon-kyo, Avatamsaka Sutra, etc., etc. I hope that's not going to be too tedious and boring, but I try to make it as interesting as possible, and so you can keep being awake. Okay, so until then, we have a little break. I see you in the next lecture. Thank you.